Haymaker Coffee Company was established in 2021 to create the best coffee to fuel the underdogs who perseveres, who hustles, and have the give-it-all mentality to achieve their American dream. Haymaker Coffee only roasts top quality, specialty grade coffee beans, resulting in brews that satisfies those who demand every drop from their coffee and day. If you work hard, run hard, fight hard, and play hard, we have your coffee right here.
And we're back, Stripe Show podcast on a Monday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. Little curveball here today. Adam Schreiber was supposed to join me. He's one of the top coaches in the game. He is the coach to Sam Ryder, who finished tied for fourth. Of course, yesterday out at the Farmers Insurance tournament. Beautiful Torrey Pines. Absolutely love that tournament. Congratulations to Farmers Insurance. I mean, look, that tournament wasn't part of the elevated schedule this year, but for all intents and purposes, I think it has that elevated feel, and it always does. Torrey Pines is one of my favorite venues. I love watching it on TV, and it delivered once again. Sam Ryder had the lead for 3 rounds and then struggled on Sunday, shooting 3 over, and Max Homa got his 6th win. 6 now on the PGA Tour, 4 in California. I've got a sweet, and I mean sweet, breakdown coming for you about the changes that Max Homa has made with Mark Blackburn. We had Mark on last year, I think September, October. Maybe it was the 1st of October. And we talked about those changes. And quite simply, these changes that they've made, I think it is really the foundation that has propelled now Max into this skill set, into this level now of one of the best players perhaps in the world. Now he's got to be more competitive in major championships, and I think he will this year. But you look at the success that he has had over the last year. I mean, this guy. He's a killer down the stretch. I mean, you put him in the hunt. That shot on 16 was off the chart. I mean, that's what guys do to win golf tournaments. Now, I think from a strategic standpoint, and if he had Scott Fawcett on with Decade Golf, his head might explode, that the line that Max Homa took there, because it was a very aggressive line. That's a big hole, 220 yards back left pin, protected by the bunker. And instead of middle of the green where you were seeing everybody going, there was only one other birdie that day, and it was a chip in. So Homa takes it over the bunker, fades it back, hits it under the cup about 10, 12 feet, and makes the putt. So no question, probably the best shot of the day that we saw in 16. And as you watch these tournaments close, you see the guys that are comfortable in that environment. Max Homa looks like he's continuing to go forward. Rory McIlroy over in Dubai holds off Patrick Reed by 1 shot. Way to go, Rory. Rory McIlroy is going forward. He's trying to win the golf tournament. Sam Ryder looked like he was protecting on Sunday. I think Sam Ryder's moving in the right direction. He's worked with Adam Schreiber for quite some time. We're going to look at his golf swing, some things that I like about Sam Ryder. I had some questions about the routine that he was doing. We're going to get into the About Golf Simulator here momentarily and go over some of those things that I think he works on. But I was really curious to ask Adam, look, how did you watch that final round on Sunday? Were you watching as a coach with a critical eye? We were texting on Sunday morning, and he was saying, look, this is a big day for Sam. He hasn't won yet. He's been out here for a while. This is a big day for him. So are you watching as a coach with a critical eye how he's going to handle the pressure, this and that? Or are you watching as a fan and you're nervous and this and that and you're cheering? I mean, there's probably a little bit of both. But we'll get Adam on at another time, because I want to talk to him about Sam, and I also want to talk to him about JJ Spaun, which I've talked about, and really the improvement of JJ Spaun's game. Of course, won the Valero Texas Open, was playing great golf heading into last week, missed the cut, but I like where his game is going as well. But before we get to Sam Ryder and I pull up his swing, I want to just clarify one thing with Rickie Fowler. Of course, on Twitter, I had a lot of things firing out over the last few days. Good conversation about the changes Max Homa has made, good dialogue around that. But also, some back and forth with Rickie Fowler. Some people disagreeing with my take when it comes to Rickie Fowler. Look, I'm a fan of Rickie Fowler. I have been. I think he's one of the best ambassadors for the game over the last 10 to 12 years, both on and off the golf course. You look at Rickie Fowler when he was here winning the Players' Championship. I mean, you have grown men walking around with these orange suits on and a flat-billed hat. I mean, Rickie's impact on kids and adults speaks for itself. He's his own brand. And there's no question Rickie Fowler has grown the game. On the course early on, coming from Oklahoma State, we saw him be elite, really. He was winning tournaments. I think he's won 5. He won the Players' Championship. He was competing in major championships, finishing second. It seemed like virtually every major championship for a couple years, under the tutelage of Butch Harmon, of course. He was playing instinctive golf. Rickie, yes, making incremental changes to his swing, but he was playing Rickie Fowler golf. The DNA of Rickie Fowler was out there. And one of the things that I think is important here with Rickie Fowler and his pattern, he's always been a guy who's had the club shaft laid off at the top. When he was in college, he would take it back like Matthew Wolff, and then that shaft would just kind of fall back and it would lay off. Let me demonstrate here for a second. When he came out out of Oklahoma State, he always had this shaft this way, right? It was always here, and then he would just kind of throw it back over his shoulder like this, and then it would steepen in transition. So it really looked like there was a lot going on. It was kind of here, and then here, and then here. It would steepen in transition. Now, not quite to that degree, but you get the idea. When he came out, Butch kind of smoothed that over a little bit. You could see him start to rehearse this first move, doing this a lot. A lot of players do that halfway back. So it wasn't so much of this, but it was more of this. And as he did that, the shaft did clean up a little bit. But for the most part, Rickie Fowler's played his whole career with the shaft laid off. And when the shaft's laid off, more times than not, it's going to steepen a little in transition. That is the pattern Rickie Fowler became a professional golfer at, a world-class player, winning golf tournaments on the PGA Tour. Butch has a really good way of taking components in the swing, minimizing it in the player's head, but incrementally getting it better. Now, through that process, he does a great job. He's brilliant, the best at it, in getting them to be instinctive and still play golf, not play golf swing. And the changes are so incremental. Sometimes you really can't even see the changes. It almost sometimes seems like it's a bit smoke and mirrors, and he uses it because he feels like perhaps, or the player feels like perhaps, that they need to be working on something. And then he just uses that as a platform to kind of build up the rest of the part of the game, the mentality of the player, what they're great at, and go out and play instinctive golf. He did it with Phil Mickelson. I can remember Phil Mickelson, when he was with Butch, was trying to stabilize his lower body. And I'll demonstrate this right-handed. Phil's always been a player who's had that change of knee flex that is taught so much in the modern game, but to the point that he would kind of overcook it, right? Early and overcook it. So forever, hey, what are you working on with Phil? I'm just trying to keep that lower body more stable. Keep a little flexion in that knee, right? Like that. Don't be so active. And Phil would go out there, and of course he would hit shots, and it would just go boom. I mean, it would just revert right back. Now, he would, in rehearsals, you could see maybe a little bit. But when he would play, it just never really looked that different. He did it with Jimmy Walker. And I'm not quite sure what they worked on with Jimmy. I think it was like some width in the swing. Butch is big on width. And, you really couldn't see like big wholesale changes. And I say that as a credit to Butch. I think there were incremental changes. There was a direction. But he would never make it feel like to the player that it was, if you do this in your golf swing, and if we make this change, then the rest of it will fall suit. So if you do this technically, you will play at a high level. Butch retired back in 2019, I believe, somewhere in there. That's the last time Rickie Fowler won Waste Management Phoenix Open. Butch wasn't going to travel anymore. Still going to work with players, but wasn't going to travel anymore. Rickie decided that he was going to go a different direction. And I think largely because Butch didn't want to travel. Big mistake. Rickie went to John Tillery, who I like. John Tillery's been on the podcast. We've talked about all of these things, full transparency from John, which he's been fantastic. Tillery's had great success. Kevin Kisner, Sepp Straka, Bryce Garnett, and others. Rickie goes to John Tillery, and they start down this path, I believe in late 19, somewhere in there. And as I'm kind of getting wind of what they're working on, in my mind, they were wholesale changes. The approach of, hey, let's just do some incremental things, but still play instinctive golf became about let's really tackle these changes in the swing. And it became very swing focused in Rickie. And you wanted to get the shaft more down the line, which had to feel more across the line. He wanted to load a little bit more into the trail side, which I think he is doing better. Club changes, body changes, a lot. Not incremental things to the player mentally, but wholesale changes that we've got to rectify and fix. It just felt too much. It felt too big. And as Rickie Fowler, the CEO of his own game and his own corporation, I thought it was a mistake. And I thought it then, and I think it now. And he went through this process, and in my eyes, really wasted about 3 years of trying to wholesale get the club not over here anymore, but over there. And when you look at practice swings today, it looks better. There's no question. I tweeted one out. I posted one on Instagram in a practice swing that it looks better. It looks as good as I've seen it. There was a driver swing in practice where that club was just perfect right there. Almost looked like it was borderline a touch across the line at times. And I watched him when I was out in Palm Springs. In addition to that, you could see him really working in trying to get more over here and load and not spin. I had some questions on that with Rickie, and he would tend to kind of spin away early versus load up and get more onto the trail side. I think he's doing that better over the last couple years. But wholesale changes, trying to get the club more down the line, trying to load up more. And through that process, when this heavy lifting changes, not incremental like he was doing with Butch, lost it. And then the putter went away. And when you go down this path and you go through wholesale changes like this, they're going to work their way out of it probably eventually. The good ones do, the really good ones. And I think Rickie Fowler is one of the really good ones. Skill set, talent out of Oklahoma State. I think Jordan Spieth out of Texas is a genius in playing the game. He went through wholesale changes and trying to get more distance. What happened? Lost it, and the putter went away. 3 years he sacrificed. He's making his way back. He's gotten back in the winner's circle, but the reality is Jordan Spieth will never be the player that he was back in 17. He's not going to show that consistency. It's this roller coaster, and that's, I think, what we're going to see with Rickie. We will see Rickie Fowler get back in there on the first and second page. He's too brilliant of a player. The putting stroke will come back. It was better last week, but he's never going to be the same version of Rickie Fowler that we saw years ago. And yes, he's older. He's 34 now. But I just asked the question, and this was my tweet. I watched Rickie Fowler play at the Farmers. It doesn't look any different when he plays. So why did he go down these changes anyway? There's no way Butch would have made it these wholesale changes if he would have just stayed with him back in 2019. Why go down and really dig in and try to get all this stuff going, make it about the golf swing, and then about playing golf second? And it was just like Spieth. Lost it with the swing. He was out there with all these contraption ons just like 4 or 5 months ago. And then all of a sudden, the pressure, it wears down the putter, the short game, and then you lose that part of the game. And then you got to build the whole thing back up again. So I'm glad he's back together with Butch. And I put this up here. Look at this. There's Rickie Fowler on the right last weekend at the Farmers. There's Rickie Fowler on the left back in 2019. Do those look different? Doesn't look any difference, folks, on the course. Yes, it looks different on the range. I'll give you that. But it doesn't look any different than it did when he started to go down this path with John Tillery and making wholesale changes and making it about the golf swing, getting it more down the line, getting more loaded. And if we do all those things, we'll play great golf. When to me, that's the wrong approach, when it should be, hey, yeah, let's establish a direction, but let's not handicap ourselves where we can't play golf anymore. It doesn't look any different. And you know what? It probably never will. It probably never will. That is his DNA. That is the pattern. Those are things that you just probably don't change in a PGA Tour player. Now, a 20 handicap coming in here, and that's what you do, and you play once a week, and you practice once every... Okay, we're probably going to make those changes. But at that level, I don't think you make the change. I think it was a big mistake. I'm happy to see him back. But get off my back when I say it doesn't look any different, because it doesn't. It's going to incrementally, because that's what Butch does. Incrementally, let's go down that path, but I'm going to build you back up. We're going to get other parts of your game back. Putting was better. Iron game was better. I think the driver will continue to get better. Yes, Rickie Fowler, I think, will compete again, but he's never going to be the same version of himself. And that's my thoughts on that. All right, now let's move to Sam Ryder. Feel bad for Sam. Sam lives down the road here at Atlantic Beach, and he went to Stetson College. Sam's kind of a late bloomer. Was born down in Winter Park by Orlando. Small college he went to. Worked himself up there to the PGA Tour. Has incrementally gotten better, and he's just a wonderful dude. I don't know him that well. I'm trying to get him into the studio here because I said he doesn't live that far from here. But I'd love to get Sam in here and just talk about his journey and talk about what he learned in the final round on Sunday. It's so difficult to keep your foot on the gas. It's a special kind of competitor and player like Max Homa, who has it. He's a killer, who gets in the hunt and they keep the pedal down. They're not afraid. They're not trying to lose, they're trying to win. And I think Sam probably admittedly was probably a little defensive, perhaps. Maybe not. I don't know that. I want to talk to Adam about that. But what did he learn from that experience? And I think that's a question in that we'll get to Sam and that we'll get to Adam. When you look at his golf swing, it's a very clean swing. Not a lot of extra moving parts. You look at this club; it pretty much goes up and down the line. Has a slight shallowing effect. I posted this in my story and tagged Sam, and he says, "Hey, doesn't look horrible." And I said, "No, it doesn't look horrible at all. This is a good swing. Watch it here; it goes up, and then you can just kind of see that little play and how it falls coming down. And that's normally what you see. Club face very square, slight shallowing in transition, and then he just turns and hits it. So if I demonstrate that, so you look at this here, kind of halfway back, club face usually looks like this, toe slightly down. You'll see Sam's got the club pretty much down the line at the top, got adequate lead arm depth around him. And then from there, just that shaft just kind of falls back like this. It's not a huge fall, right? It's not this Matthew Wolff or Jim Furyk big loop. And the reason is because it's pretty clean here. It's pretty clean here. And then it can just kind of pitch back slightly. And then from there, he can just turn and hit it. But when I think of Sam Ryder's swing, what I think of is this. And I'm going to put up this picture here. And this picture is a sequence of the same swing from face on. And when you look at this, what jumps out to me was Sam, and it was so evident when he hit that ball out of the divot in the fairway. And when I saw the ball go into the divot, I think it was on the front nine, I said, Sam won't have any problem with that. And the reason is because he covers it so dang well. We talk a lot about side bend to the right, excessive side bend, like a Will Zalatoris, like Jason Day's trying to get it, like most tour players are trying to get rid of some side bend. Sam Ryder is not a player that has excessive side bend. And if you look at the picture there this sequence, all the way on the left at the top, you look at that transition. I think the big thing to note there is from the belt buckle to the chin. Okay, the belt buckle to the chin, there wasn't a tremendous amount of separation there between those 2 points. There's a subtle side bend there, but it wasn't like his hips really slid out from under his upper body. You look at the middle picture, that's the same. You look at the next picture, right, at delivery. Now you can see it starting to increase just a little bit more, and then through the impact zone, even a little bit more. So this covering concept that Sam does exceptionally well, and you look at him from a strokes gain approach standpoint, this year, his iron game has been really good. Currently, strokes gain approach, he's 15th. That's one of the things I wanted to talk to Adam about, is some of the things that are happening from his strokes gain approach standpoint with his iron game. And I would have to think a lot of it really kind of stems from face very square, club is really up and down that line beautifully, like I talked about, but then also the ability to cover the ball. So watch this here as I start down. So as I start down and I let my lower body kind of move to the left, you can see how my upper kind of stays right there with it. Now watch this. If my lower drives excessively towards the target, now you can see how my upper is being left behind. That early side bend in transition is one of the things that so many players are trying to get out. Now, if you're a player that does that, and you're a player that wants to get rid of some of that, what you'll see these players do is they'll get a little bit of space between their knees, and they'll get a little bit of this kind of sit move where the right hip kind of sits a little bit versus that right hip driving and kind of pushing laterally this way. All right, so they get a little sit. The left shoulder tends to stay a little bit more down in transition. I'm exaggerating, but you can see when I do that, my upper center and my lower center are staying a little bit more in line. And then when I turn to hit it and my pelvis continues to move weight forward and my left leg continues to push up, now that side bend, there's a little bit there incrementally through the strike. So I don't get that side bend early, okay? I get it from here and then from there. So Sam is exceptional. I mean, exceptional in his ability to really cover the ball. And again, covering it is really decreasing that side bend, and particularly decreasing that side bend in transition. Now, before you go out there and you start covering the ball this spring, let's make darn sure that you've got the club face pretty square. Let's make darn sure that we're getting the shaft pitched back a little bit. And let's make darn sure that your left arm does have some depth, that it's around you, okay? So face, square where you can see the face there looking up towards the sky a little bit. Left arm around you, covering the right shoulder, the shaft pitching back in transition. I mean, those are things that you kind of want to have in place before you start trying to cover the ball, as far as kind of an order to the madness. But my goodness, does he do a great job of covering the ball? And my goodness, is it really translating this year into better iron play? As that's really one of the strengths of his swing, in addition to his putting, right? His putting has been really, really good as well. I think right now, from a putting standpoint, strokes gain, he is 28th. Now, I got some DMs about the rehearsal that Sam Ryder does before he hits every shot, this left arm only. And I was actually, ironically, I was watching him in Palm Springs do it. He was right in the middle of the range, and he spent quite a bit of time on the range. And what he was doing, and he takes us out to the course, is you can see him take his left arm in his left hand, and he just makes these swings where he takes it up, and then he kind of holds his left arm with his right hand, and then he brings it down to deliver it. So it's almost like he's taking his right hand and kind of pinning his left arm against his chest, right? He's not letting his left arm kind of fly off his chest early. He's keeping his right hand under and tucked and keeping his left arm against his chest, almost like he's turning into his lead arm versus his lead arm blasting off like this. Now, when you do that, the hand path can kind of get down. The left arm can kind of ride down. And now that hand path can kind of get over that trail toe. And then the second thing that he would do is you would see him kind of milk the face. Watch this. My left hand, I'm going to milk that face. I'm going to turn that toe down. See how I'm doing that? So I'm kind of milking that face, turning that toe down. And then from there, I could just turn and hit it. So what he's working on, I wanted to ask Adam this, is to me, he's working on trying to turn into that lead arm. He's working on trying to get that left arm to kind of slide down so the shaft can get a little bit more out in front of him. And then that club face to be a little bit more prepared, maybe square to slightly closed here, versus that left arm blasting off the chest, that shaft pitching back underneath, and then that face riding a little bit more open. Okay. And that would be a pattern that you would see some players work on as well. Now, that's not great advice for a higher handicap who might have the face open and who has too much of this over the top, doesn't have enough side bend through the strike. So it's all relative. But when you look at a player who covers it as well as he does, and then you kind of counter it with this drill, to me, it probably makes a lot of sense that he's trying to get that arm down, he's trying to get that face prepped, and then from there, just turn left and hit it. And for the most part, man, was it good. Now, here's the last part of this that I want to talk about with Sam Ryder. And thank you for being here. I was looking to have Adam Schreiber on, who's been Sam Ryder's coach. And Adam wasn't able to make it today. We will get him on. And I think we'll get Sam on as well because he does live here in the South Jacks area. But nonetheless, kind of an instruction Monday, a fun one here today. Talked about Rickie Fowler. We're talking about Sam Ryder here and talking about this really strong iron game and covering the ball. Now, this is that swing that I had in sequence earlier, and you can see really covering the ball. There's no excessive side bend here in Sam's swing at all. Now, the one thing I wonder, and this is what I wanted to ask Adam as well, is if I bring this back up again. The weakness of Sam's game is his driving. Right now, he hits at about 294 yards off the tee. Strokes gain off the tee is 179th. He misses it to the right as much or twice as much as he does the left. And you could see that miss start to leak in on Sunday when he shot 3 over, that ball kind of really flaring out to the right. So you start thinking about where does that come from, right? And there's two things that really kind of hit my head as I watch Sam swing. And these were some of the questions I wanted Adam to talk about in what they work on to maybe get rid of that miss for Sam. Because the reality is when I look at Sam's swing in Sam's game is if you could get maybe a little more distance, which would be risky, no question, that would be huge. But could you get a little more accuracy and miss some of that shot or eliminate some of the miss off to the right? One of the things sometimes when you see a player who covers it really well with the driver, like there's this no hint of being behind the ball too much, right? Sometimes as the club gets longer, and particularly the driver when it's teed up, that can work against him a little bit, right? Because let's face it, if we go to the driver, can create a situation where that club head can arrive a little too soon, and that face can be a bit fraction open. Because the reality is with a driver, like we want to get the ball forward, we want to get a little bit more back behind it. And if I'm a guy that just turns and really stays right there and really covers it right on top, and the tendency you can see where I might get a little out ahead of it at times, and that face can just stay a little bit open, and we hit that little flare to the right. And that's what I see with Sam from time to time. I'm curious, is the driver perhaps a little bit different in his mind than the iron. For example, is he perhaps with the driver feeling that he's a touch more behind it at address, and maybe even just like a little float to the right in the backswing? Like, it's okay to have more pressure moving into your right side. It's okay maybe for your head to even float a little to the right, than to give you a little bit more time and space coming down to get that face around and squared up. So that would be one thing that I'd want to ask Adam, if that's something that they work on to eliminate that shot to the right. Guys that cover it under the gun can really cover and just really almost get too much on top of it. It can get a little steep. The face, as the club gets longer, can hang open. So with the driver, hey, get behind it. Let's really get you loading behind it, maybe, and let the left heel come up for a little more distance. And now it's like, wow, I'm over here. Like, I'm over here. Now I need to go back. And I think that'd be an interesting direction for him from a distance and accuracy standpoint with the driver. The other thing that certainly can cause that, as I talked about from the other view and what he was working on with the left arm, is certainly if he is kind of letting that blast off and that face, tending to kind of lag too much open versus turning down. I would have to think that he's got to really get that face turning down early, so it's square at impact, in particularly with how much he's right on top of the ball and covering it. So those are some things that as you kind of evaluate Sam's game and you look at it and you kind of piece things together and what you're watching, that I think kind of tells the story from his iron game all the way to the driver. Now, the one thing I'll finish here with this, with Sam, is his putting. His putting stroke and his putting routine is so good, and it's so committed. I think if we could, most everybody kind of move this way just a little bit, I think it would help the majority of us. But you watch him, and he gets in there. I mean, he's done his thing. He's ready to go. He gets in there. He aims that face. He gets comfortable. He takes one look, and he hits it. I mean, it is boom, 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 boom. Very committed. Very solid. And as I mentioned, he's putting very well this year. I love that. You could time Sam from the minute he steps in to aim the face to the minute he hits it, that allotment of time, and I bet you it's within a half a second every single time. It is so dialed in and committed. I love it. And I leave you here today on the Stripe Show podcast with what is your routine, or what is your cadence? I like the word cadence. As you get up to the ball and hit it, what is it? For me, I don't go quite that decisive that quick. I aim the face. I step in with my trail foot, aim the face. Then I get comfortable. I try to give it one long look, kind of shuffle my feet, a second long look, and then as soon as my eyes hit the ball back, I hit it. Okay? That's my cadence. It has that flow to it. Mine's probably more like this, where Sam's kind of more. What is yours? All right? What is your cadence? What is your tempo over it? What do you do the minute that you step in and aim it and then hit it? Try to smooth that out so your brain knows the consistency of that and when it's time to pull the trigger. And I'm telling you, Sam's routine is a plus. All right. A few thoughts today on a Monday. Stripe Show podcast. Our boy Adam Stryber couldn't be here today. I apologize. Longtime coach to Sam Ryder. But hey, congratulations to Sam. I think he's moving in the right direction. T4. We're going to follow him closely. We're also going to follow JJ Spawn closely. Continue to follow, as I have been, who Adam Stryber works with as well. But food for thought there, and what we talked about with Rickie, and I think some of the mistakes that he made a few years back. I'm happy though that he's back with Butch. I think there's a positive outlook for Rickie ahead, and that is great for golf. I mean, that is great for golf. I think there's some positive outlook for Sam. I think there's some positive outlook for JJ Spawn, even though that he missed the cut this week. And there's certainly, and I'll finish with this, there is certainly a positive outlook for Max Homa. Max Homa's next step now is to be more competitive in major championships. The U.S. Open is at the LA Country Club, where he currently holds the course record. Max Homa needs to have a good run of major championships this year. But when you talk about changes, and you talk about those changes working for you, the changes Max Homa has made with Mark Blackburn, who I think now is coaching Justin Rose, who's played pretty good the last couple of weeks. Look, a coach-player dynamic that has been as productive as those two, you just don't see it to that level like it's been. And these two guys are in sync right now. And I've got a great video. I mean, a great video that I'm posting tonight on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter about exactly the changes that Max has made. And guess what? For all of you out there that hate the backswing work, it's all about impact. You know how many times I hear that's the most annoying thing I hear. It's all about impact, Travis. That's all that matters. Doesn't matter what you. Okay, got it. Is that why Max Homa redid some things in his backswing that has now elevated his ball striking to a whole nother level? Is that why John Rahm has worked on some things around his club right foot in the top of the swing so he can do his thing coming down? Is that why Rory McIlroy tries to get the shaft a little bit steeper going back so then it's more out in front of him? I mean, come on, guys. I mean, this is what I like. These guys, the backswing has so much value for a PGA Tour player, LPGA Tour player, and for you at home. Learn to get those things shaped and in order, and then from there, be instinctive. Now, you got to be careful. You've got to be careful the higher skill set that you are, okay? The more skill that you have as a coach, I'm probably going to be a little more sensitive as I get in there and make changes, especially if you're on the PGA Tour and you have a pattern like Rickie Fowler that's always been laid off and steep in transition. I'm probably like, I'm gonna be very, very careful with that. Especially if you're Phil Mickelson, who's always had an extended lead wrist at the top and early in transition. You can work around that. Is it ideal from a science standpoint? Either one of those? It's not. But you're going to learn to work around it. You're going to learn to minimize what it is that you're doing and just stay instinctive and let the DNA of the athlete, of the genius come out. It's tricky. There's no perfect formula to it, but it's just fascinating as a coach and the host of this podcast to watch it from a distance and see what does work and what is attainable versus what isn't. And that's usually where my perspective comes from. All right. Thank you. Stripe Show Podcast. We'll be back tomorrow to pick our third winner this year for Pebble Beach. Jeff Feinberg joins me. Have a good night.
PXG has done it again with the launch of a new lineup of drivers, fairways, hybrids, and irons. The new Gen 5 golf clubs deliver significantly increased MOI, faster ball speeds, longer distances, and tighter dispersions, all coupled with the exceptional feel and sound golfers have come to expect from PXG. Schedule your custom fitting or buy online at pxg.com.